The former White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre,
Yeah.
announced this week that she's got a book coming out and that she's leaving the Democratic Party to become an independent. There's so much to say about this, but I'd like to start with this question for you, because you know about media and publishing, et cetera. Besides the advance that she got, what do you think's in it for her to do this book?
I think everyone who's attached to Biden and the health cover up is trying to scatter and reinvent themselves as some kind of conservative friendly, Republican friendly truth teller. There's a lot of anecdotes in the reporting in Axios this morning about her that I found very interesting. Number one, that she herself had a PR person when she was the press secretary for the White House. If you're in a position of like service in the White House or in any position in politics. My sister-in-law is serving in the Trump White House now. She sure as hell doesn't have a publicist. Like, it's clearly about promoting yourself and your agenda. I also thought it was really interesting that she thought she was going to be a co-host of my old stomping ground, The View. Everybody wants to do The View. Simone Sanders had said that at one point. Like, everybody thinks
Yeah.
that it's easy and they want to do it. And let me tell you something, like the only thing that really is like a good thing at The View that will get you a job there is being authentic and knowing who you are. And a woman who worked for President Biden in the highest press position you can, and then a few months later decides she's an independent is not an authentic person. And I thought she was the worst modern press secretary ever. I said that when she was doing it. I was shocked she got the job. I was shocked she kept the job. I know there was also reporting when she was serving that people were trying to get her to leave so John Kirby could take over, and she basically refused and said, like, I'm not leaving, Leonardo DiCaprio style, like in The Wolf of Wall Street. So I just find this fascinating and also appalling, and I do not think it's going to work.
All right, a couple things I want to pick up on. First of all, you hear it more than I do for obvious reasons, but it's hilarious how so many women think, yeah, I can be on The View. Looks easy. Just sit around and chat. Explain to people how ludicrous it is to think that anybody can walk in off the street and be on The View.
I think for a Republican, it's one of the hardest gigs in media, period. And then whatever you have to say about the women hosting now, they're all talented broadcasters, and it takes a lot of prep. It was a time that was particularly hard on my marriage because I never had time for Ben. It was just constant prep before, after, and then going over. At least when I was there, they would go over clips with you about what you did right and what you did wrong on a weekly basis. So it's an incredibly arduous job, and also like. They're also like, who's leaving? Because they only have 5 people on that show. Like, who's leaving if she comes in? Not Whoopi, not Joy. Like, it's just the idea that she was terrible at her job. Like, maybe Jen Psaki would have had a potential at it. I don't know, but the whole thing's weird. In fact, she had a press person the whole time. I just found that so bizarre.
All right, so we saw some blind quotes, some tweets, some on the record quotes of her former colleagues expressing not just outrage that she's doing the book and the point of view you and I and others have of how ridiculous it is to go in 4 months from being the spokesperson for a Democratic president to now saying you're leaving the party, but also people now speaking out and saying how bad she was at her job. And again, I've said she shouldn't have taken the job. They shouldn't have offered her the job. Like, it wasn't like, well, there's a good chance she could do it well, but it turns out she couldn't. Like, there was no indication she could do the job well based on her previous work. And it was pretty quickly clear that it wasn't just bad for her, it was bad for the president and bad for the country. So my question to you is, if she really goes forward and publishes this book, presumably she is, how much heat do you think she's going to take from folks who criticize her performance and her decision to make money off of this?
I think it's going to make Jake Tapper's press tour look like Disneyland. I think she's going to get annihilated because it's even dishier. It's even more ridiculous. It's even more absurd. And, she at the time, I'm all for women in positions of power. I'm all for diversity. I don't have a problem with these things, but I do have a problem when that is your standing qualification. And I remember when her first press appearance, she was like, I am a Black woman, I'm a queer woman, whatever. And like, that's all fine and good, but particularly in that situation, it's irrelevant. Like, what's relevant is how you are representing the White House and how you're speaking to the press. And I think people like her hurt women in positions of power, because it looks like you only got there because you're a woman. And like I said, at the time, I just remember having so many conversations with people on the left who work in positions of power in the DNC, being like, how does she still have this job? She can barely put a sentence together. And I think she's a very sad figure. And she clearly, I don't know her personal life at all, but clearly this is some kind of effort to get money. And I think after this book, she's going to have a hard time, honestly getting arrested in Gila Bend, Arizona. I think she's going to be like really on the outs after this.
One more thing about this, which is it appears that the argument she's going to make is that it was an error for people in the White House and Democrats to abandon Joe Biden, that it would have been better for everyone if he'd stayed at the top of the ticket. And then you've got Democrats saying, had Joe Biden stayed at the top of the ticket, he would have destroyed the Democratic Party. He would have lost 40 states, et cetera. Do you think, assuming that's what she says in the book, and it seems like it is, do you think that's a defensible position, that it would have been smarter for the Democrats to keep Joe Biden on the ticket?
No, not after that debate. I mean, and again, like she has, what else is she going to say? She's the person that went on TV that said, I can't keep up with Joe Biden. Like he's running circles around me. And part of the problem with her record, it was just so propagandistic. I used to call her Baghdad Bob before all this, because everything she said was just, ridiculous propaganda. And I know that's part of that job, but there are people that have done that job. Again, Jen Psaki, I thought did a great job when she was, I don't like her, but I thought she did a great job. And there's ways to do it that aren't so patently absurd. So, I mean, what do you think? Do you think she's going to have a career after this?
I really think she's risking everything in exchange for a book advance, not just her relationships with people, but to the extent she wants a public-facing position in the world. I can't imagine she could write a credible book explaining she's going to have to either explain why she defended Joe Biden, or it seems like what she's going to say is, oh, Joe Biden was just fine, when even though the country was onto that before, there are almost no Democrats who say that now.
Yeah.
Very few. So I think also that she didn't like the way she was treated. Her colleagues were put in a very tough position because they thought she was hurting the presidency through her incompetence, and they tried to minimize her role or force her out. And I guess the president didn't want her to go, or someone else didn't want her to go. But she's about to pick fights with some really tough knife fighters, and I think they will. The book and the reception of the book and the incoming that she's going to take, I think, are going to make it very difficult for her to hang on to whatever professional reputation she has left.
Had she come to me with this book proposal, I would have been like, burn this and go teach at someplace. Like, go find a college that you can teach whatever at, have a tenure or whatever. But I don't know who told her to do this, but it's on a very screwed up note. It's going to be really fun to talk about, because I can just imagine I hope she comes on two-way with you or here on your show. I would love it. But she's gonna. I don't know, dude. Politics is such a wild industry, because it's like sometimes completely void of just like any just common sense on any, even the most like cursory level. So stupid.
I have to say, I don't think real people necessarily are hugely into this, but in our world, for some reason, the elements of this have just hit like a ton of bricks. People are so interested in it, and I'm looking forward to the book tour, because I want to see exactly how she and her publicist handle it. All right.
One last thing. If she goes on The View, which apparently is her promised land, that's not going to go the way she thinks it's going to go, because those people love Joe Biden, and also they don't like hypocrites. So if she thinks that's going to be a safe landing, make sure if she's booked there that you tune in it live.
Yes, I will make it a pay-per-view episode.